keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
What is up, everybody? I am your host, Dante Gomez, wrapping up a big weekend in Denver sports. We had the Buffs in action. We had the Broncos in action. A lot to get to today, and we are joined by Denver Sports' Will Peterson. Will, thank you for being here with us. Let's just dive right into it. Broncos go and sweep the Raiders for the first time in a long time. First win in Las Vegas for this team. What did you make of the game? What did you make of Bo Nix, the defense? It wasn't always pretty, but, you know, a divisional win's hard to come by. So I think it's one of those, well, we'll take it. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to me, Dante, was the second half. When they were down 13-9 at halftime, you're thinking, someone's got to make a play, right? Like, just change the vibe of this game. It did not have a great vibe. Well, Brandon Jones made a play, picking off Gardner Minshew, and then Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton hook up for a great touchdown, and boom. Just like that, Broncos up 16-13. Nix gets another one to Sutton to go up 26-16, and then a Nick Bonito strip sack essentially seals it. So it's like, okay, we need plays. Well, guess what? Those were 4 plays I just gave you. Marvin Mims had the screen pass down the sideline, too, that he almost scored on. Like, it just felt like in that second half, even when you don't have your best game, if you make 4, 5, 6 plays, you can beat a bad team like the Raiders, and that's exactly what Denver did. So first half is not one that I'll remember the rest of my life, that's for sure. But the second half definitely had moments, and that's how you dispatch of a team that is now on a 7-game losing streak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned it, first half, just settling for field goals, finally getting in the end zone in that second half. What do you think that difference was in terms of making it into the end zone versus settling short? Shout out to Will Lutz, the perfect 3 for 3 in that first half. So those 9 points did end up becoming pretty big at the end of that game there. Changes the game in terms of when the Raiders are trying to score. So still will take the field goals, but what do you think was that difference in terms of them getting into the end zone when they got in those red zone trips?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive line was better in the second half, and it's hard to be much worse. I mean, Max Crosby was so in the head of Mike McGlinchey, Dante. It was crazy. He had the 2 holding penalties, the false start. It was just like, wow, Crosby's wrecking this game without even getting a sack. I'm not going to say the O-line was perfect in the second half by any stretch, but Bo Nix did have more protection. And I thought Sean called and designed plays that allowed them to get rid of the ball much quicker. And let's be honest, like the throw to Cortland on the first one, that's just a perfect throw. How do you change going from field goals to getting touchdowns? You make perfect throws. And even the second one, the window was not really there, but in the back of the end zone, he hit Cortland Sutton. So I thought the playmakers showed up, and I thought the offensive line did get better. And we all know that Max Crosby's streak with a sack against the Broncos did come to an end yesterday as well.
Yeah, I thought Bo putting balls in places where only his receivers could make plays on it. So it was smart football while still taking shots, which is, what we really want. We do want, the Broncos to take shots, Bo Nix to take those shots. And I think they took great advantage of it when they had the opportunities. Bo recognizing, one-on-one coverage. Let me just give a nice, jump ball for Cortland on that first one. And the second one, it was either going out of the end zone or it was going in Cortland Sutton's hands. There was no other, bad scenarios that could have happened out of that. You mentioned Bo Nix there as well. Bo firmly in the running for Rookie of the Year at this point. Jaden Daniels has another loss in an interesting fashion yesterday. Do you think it's Bo Nix's award to lose at this point?
Well, the odds makers have tightened it up. I mean, it's basically even as we wake up on this Monday morning. And, I think the momentum is clearly Bo Nix's way. Dante, this is a good reminder why we shouldn't give out these awards halfway through seasons, right? Because everyone and their brother said, wow, it's Jaden Daniels. He's got it locked up. Well, the Commanders have fell off a cliff. They lost to Cooper Rush and the Cowboys yesterday. Cliff Kingsbury, he's not getting those calls about a head coaching position like we all thought he was going to get a month or two ago. And Bo Nix is just ascending. I mean, his trek has been unreal. There's some stats floating around on social media this morning about having more than 20 touchdowns and fewer than 2 turnovers in a 5-game stretch, or some, I can't remember the number of games, but a 10-game stretch maybe, I don't know. But it's like Bo, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Patrick Mahomes. Like, really? You kidding me?
It's a great list to be on. Yeah.
This guy's in right now. So at this point, I mean, I can't believe he's still a slight dog when it comes to the odds makers. Dante, I'll be surprised if Bo Nix doesn't win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I'm with you at this point. I think he's just the way he's playing seems so sustainable and it's just repeatable. And he's ascending, he's getting better almost every week, certainly from the first half of the season to the second half of the season. And Jaden Daniels over in Washington, Cliff Kingsbury, his offensive coordinator, notorious for strong starts and slow finishes when he's coaching. That goes all the way back to Texas Tech, his time with the Arizona Cardinals. Those first 7 games always, comes out the gate firing and just kind of falls off a cliff towards the end of that season. So I like Bo Nix to win it at this point. I saw you smiling.
Well, because you said Cliff Kingsbury falls off a cliff, you have to say no pun intended or pun intended when you make a dad joke like that.
Gotcha. Well, no pun intended on that one. Obvious, maybe a slight pun intended actually, yeah. But yeah. So it looks like they're rolling. We got a big game tonight in the AFC standings as far as wild card races go as well. The two teams that the Broncos are looking up at in action, both Harbaugh's as the Ravens and the Chargers go. Do you have any rooting interest in that game tonight?
Yeah, it's tricky, man, because we've kind of been focused on what's behind the Broncos, right? Like a lot of conversation about the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Colts. Well, guess what? The Colts lost. The Bengals were on a bye, and yes, the Dolphins beat the Patriots. I was trying to tell anyone that would listen, it looks like Miami is their biggest threat, but Miami's still 5-6. Broncos are 7-5 now. Yeah, I like where you're thinking here. Let's start looking ahead. Man, it'd be nice to have that tiebreaker with the Ravens, because if Baltimore loses tonight, you and the Ravens have the same record. You're both 7-5. So I guess in that sense, you're cheering for the Chargers. But at the same time, if Baltimore beats the Chargers, all of a sudden they have 4 losses, and you still get to play them again in the much talked about flex game on Thursday, December 19th. So, man, Dante, this is a coin flip. I think it's who you are a bigger believer in to win more games down the stretch. To me, I'm probably a bigger believer in the Baltimore Ravens. I still think they're just stacked with talent. So if you think Baltimore is going to get it together and win games, I think you root for the Ravens tonight, and then you hope you can hand the Chargers their 5th loss, and then you'd both be 1-1, so go to the next tiebreaker, I believe, is division record. Long story short, I think it's Baltimore tonight, but I think it's pretty close. Where's your head at?
I'm rooting for Baltimore, too. I think the Chargers have kind of a facade in their record. I don't think they're as good as they have looked so far. And I think they have a tough stretch coming up here to the point where they could end up being, 9-7 by the end of the year, albeit they have a great record right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are, still in the, up in the air coming into those last 2-3 weeks of the season in terms of, are we even going to make the playoffs? So I think it's got to be Baltimore. They just look more legit to me, and it feels like that will transfer into the rest of the season. And I mean, Ravens teams are always so good in November and December at football, so it's hard for me to say that they're not gonna just kind of keeping the pace, I guess, in front of the Broncos for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Lamar's right there for MVP. Heck, Derrick Henry should be right there for MVP. They have 2 unbelievable players, although Saquon doing what he did last night certainly makes a dent into that race. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's a big game for Broncos country for sure, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different opinions on who to root for. Maybe we just root for the tie, Dante. I don't know. The tie, I don't think we've seen one yet in the NFL this year. So, I don't know. That'd be fun. But one more thought that I hadn't spit out yet that I wanted to get to on the Broncos yesterday. Sean Payton's post-game press conference was fascinating. Like, it was remarkable how many times he said, this team last year doesn't win that game. And then when he got pressed on it, he's like, well, I'm not talking about last year. I'm talking about this year. It's like, dude, you're the guy who just brought it up 3 different times that this team last year wouldn't win the game. And then at the very end, he kind of caught himself and he said, no disrespect to last year's team. And it's like, I mean, how many shots is this guy going to fire at Russell Wilson? I love it, right? Because it's just kind of funny that Sean is just sort of taking these victory laps. Like, I was right. Russ was the problem. I mean, Russ is winning in Pittsburgh until Thursday Night Football. Not winning real pretty, but winning. Does Sean Payton's head hit the pillow? And there's Russell Wilson dancing around in his thoughts. I don't know. But that post-game press conference yesterday was really interesting.
No, I thought so too. I did want to dig into that as well, because that was like his opening remarks was, hey, this team last year doesn't win this game. And it's like, oh, well, it's kind of pretty obvious who you're talking about in that situation. You're not hiding it too well. But I almost agree. You talked about a key to the Broncos in the second half was getting the ball out of your hands quickly. That was the biggest kryptonite for Russell Wilson. So I do think Bo Nix wins this game over Russell Wilson. It's going to be a long time till we know who was right in that decision in terms of Sean Payton moving off of Russell Wilson, at least till the end of the season, probably even the next 2-3 seasons before we really know if he was vindicated on that decision. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It was very interesting that he kept referring to last year's team. And then when he gets pressed on it, it's like, whoa, what are you doing talking about last year's team? It's like, dude, you were the guy that brought up last year's team. No one made you talk about last year's team in any way. But I do agree with what he was saying, that last year's team probably doesn't win that game. And I think that's just a testament to this year's team, Bo Nix's leadership. You see all those guys in the locker room in that post-game interview on the field. They all love playing for Bo Nix. They seem to Bo Nix seems to really galvanize this locker room together, whether it's him or Sean Payton or, just a whole team effort at this point. So while it was interesting that he said it, I don't disagree with what he was saying. But real quick before we move on to the Buffs, I do want to get into the Broncos running game, which is pretty non-existent yesterday. Do you think that's something that the Broncos can get away with for the rest of the year, or are they going to have to figure that out if they want to be real contenders going the rest of the way?
No, at some point, especially in December and January, you have to have a running game, right? So they're going to need to figure it out. It was just, again, disappointing that, like, Jaleel had the hot hand yesterday, and he had 7 carries, and it was just like and I know he got briefly hurt, but he was not out of the game very long at all. So, I mean, honestly, like, we can sit here week after week and say, ride the hot hand, ride the hot hand. Sean just kind of refuses to ride the hot hand. I mean, Dante, even in the last 3 minutes of the game, when he went pass, people wanted to throw their remotes. Like, is this Deion Sanders or is this Sean Payton? Like, what are we doing here? I wish I had a better answer for you other than commit to whichever of the 3 guys looks good. And honestly, the last 3 weeks, it's been someone different. In Kansas City, it was Audric Estime. Here last week against the Falcons, it was Javonte Williams. And in Vegas, it was Jaleel McLaughlin. So I think that goes to show you they don't have a true number 1. But Sean's got to identify, hopefully by the time the first quarter is over, this is my guy today, and this is the guy I'm going to feed the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. The passing on 3 straight downs there with, I think it was like 3.5 minutes left. You eat up like 26 seconds of the game clock at that point, which is just not enough, especially when you're trying to protect your lead. You don't want to give the Raiders any chance, or at least any more time than they needed at the end there. It did get a little close. Broncos defense comes up huge at the end, though. Multiple plays, stripping Gardner Minshew, the big sack towards the end of the game as well. So the Broncos defense made plays when they needed to, but I almost wish we were in a situation where they didn't have to make those plays, because Sean Payton would have been a little better in his play calling towards the end of that game there. But a win's a win again, like I said, or to open up the show. Any divisional win, I think you'll take it, even though it is against the lowly Raiders, going on the road, not stealing a win, but getting a win. And again, didn't look pretty. So we'll see. Hopefully that running game can get a little better. I like your idea of riding the hot hand. Jaleel McLaughlin looked pretty good yesterday. Estime looked good at times. They were giving him the ball on that final stretch when they were eating the clock, actually. I think there was like a minute or so left, which always made me nervous, because it's like, this is the guy that had the fumbling issue. Now you're turning to him in the clutch time of the game. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, he did it in Kansas City, and he didn't fumble, and he got you down to the 35, or even closer, the 17, 35-yard field goal. So, I think the fumbling thing's behind him, but you're knocking on all the wood, Dante.
Yeah, we'll knock on wood over here as well. All right, well, let's finish up with the Buffs. They folded, keeping the Las Vegas theme here. Lost in Kansas City in Arrowhead there. Weird situation going on with Kansas where they're playing their home games at Arrowhead, the Kansas City Chiefs home. CU controlled their own destiny coming into the weekend, and of course, madness happens around college football as Bama loses, Ole Miss loses, Texas A&M loses. So could have been a great weekend for the Buffs in terms of shooting up the rankings, and instead they falter out in KC. It just feels like they didn't show up, honestly. It feels like Kansas was ready to play. They played more physical than CU did, and maybe CU wasn't ready for a dogfight like that. What were your thoughts from that game?
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't tackle, and they couldn't adjust. I mean, the Kansas running game, Dante, that was a tough 3 hours of our lives, 3.5 hours of our lives on Saturday afternoon. I mean, it was just run it down your throat. Buffs can't get a stop. Buffs can't get off the field. We have praised Robert Livingston so much this year, and rightfully so. But, oh, boy, he picked a bad day to have his worst game of the year because there was no adjustments. Like you said, it looked like there was no heart. There was no ability to tackle. I mean, the Buffs did make that game 23-21, and you're thinking, okay, finally, Travis has 2 touchdowns. He's doing the Heisman pose. Like, they're going to win this game. And then what happens? They can't get off the field. And they just could never get a stop, could never get a turnover. Even like when Shiloh Sanders got called for targeting, I think we were all kind of thinking like, well, him getting ejected wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because at least it would get him off the field. That's a whole different conversation for a different day. But in a large part, Dante, the defense let them down, and the defense is going to be the reason that Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Coach Prime don't get to go to the Big 12 title game without a lot of help, and obviously don't get to go play for a shot at the college football playoff.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how the season finishes up here, if they still have the heart that maybe they didn't show last game, but they have shown throughout the season. Seeing as now they're playing for maybe a little less. They do play on Friday, so they don't really know what's going to happen until that Saturday shakes out. But I would say most likely they're on the outside looking in. Can't say the same for my Sun Devils. They had a big win down in Tempe. So I was looking forward to an ASU-CU Big 12 championship. Looks like one of those teams won't be making it there. But yeah, I'm excited. Do you think there's any quit in this team, seeing as they are not playoff bound, or it appears that they're not playoff bound anymore?
No, I think the point you made about the schedule is huge. Like, them playing Friday is great, right? Because then you can hopefully just win Friday, and then you just get a kickback, relax, and hope the scoreboard breaks your way on Saturday. Again, you need multiple things to go right. You need multiple upsets. Like, you need Houston to beat BYU. I don't think that's happening. You need Arizona to beat Arizona State. I don't think that's happening. I think Kansas State could beat Iowa State. But, again, you're still going to need a pretty big upset to get into that Big 12 title game. But put it this way, man, I'm glad they're not playing like Saturday night at 8:30, because if the scoreboard hadn't broken their way, that would be the ultimate recipe for the letdown game. At least they're the first ones to go. Hopefully can go out there, get back on track. And they still have a lot to play for, in the sense of, let's make sure that Travis Hunter solidifies his Heisman Trophy and Shedeur Sanders solidifies his number 1 overall pick. And honestly, it could be their last ever game Friday, man. Because I don't see Shedeur and Travis playing in the Alamo Bowl. I just don't. It doesn't make sense for their future. So there's a real shot this is the last time we see them in black and gold, which is insane considering just 48 hours ago we're talking about freaking playoff. And now we may be talking about this is the last time we ever get to see Shedeur and Travis.
Yeah, I mean, what a run it has been for CU the last 2 seasons. All the storylines, the roller coaster, the national media getting involved, the local media getting involved. So it's been a fun 2 years of seeing Shiloh and Travis, and it's just
Shedeur and Travis. Shedeur.
Oh yeah, sorry, Shedeur. Well, Shiloh too, maybe, but it's been great watching them. It's been fun watching that story, and it's a shame it had to, appears that it'll end this way. Like, I'm with you though. Hopefully on Friday they do go out, give it their all, and kind of make a statement of, hey, we're probably not gonna make the playoff, but look how successful a season we had. Look how good we can be when we play it up to our potential. So we'll see how that breaks out later this week. Will, thank you for joining me. Any thoughts you want to get out on the way out, or we can just wrap it up here?
No, I think we covered it all, Dante. It was an interesting football weekend, to say the least. We've had some really fun ones recently where we're coming here talking about 2 big wins. At least the Broncos' second half salvaged it for us, because the first 6 quarters were not the most fun of my life. The 4 for the Buffs, the 2 for the Broncos. 7 and 8, though, pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, great win for the Broncos. They look to continue their playoff push. We'll be joined by James Palmer tomorrow. Don't want to miss that. We'll be back at noon tomorrow. Will, thank you for joining. Everyone, thank you for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.